Okay, welcome to Coaches on Couches, episode 6. My name is John Min. I'm here with my co-host Pat Goldsmith. Today we have a wonderful, fantastic episode, and actually one of our first on uneven bars. And this is actually going to be a two-part series. In 2 weeks, we're going to be discussing advanced bars with a different panel, including, but with also Steve Arkell. This first panel will be talking more about the fundamentals and the developing of uneven bars. Our panel is very esteemed. We have Steve Arkell, who's the USAG National Staff, the owner and head coach of Mavericks Gymnastics in Region 3. We then have Colden Reicher from the Gym Club out in California, Region 1. We have Cale Robinson from Gymnastics East up in Washington in Region 2. And last but not least, we have Cassie Rice, who was the coach of Tasha Schweikert back in the Olympics. She is from Gym Cats in Nevada, Region 1 also. So once again, thank you everyone for attending. We have a wonderful panel. I'm just going to start us really quick and off. I'm going to hit Colden first. Do you call it a clear hip or a free hip? It's one thing that people always ask. And just to start off, break the ice. What do you call it, Colden?
A clear hip.
Any reason why?
I think that's just what I've been used to. That's what I called it growing up. So it was just clear hip for me, so I've stuck with that one.
Steve, what about you?
I call it also a clear hip, and because I want them to be off the rail, and I think they understand that, right? I don't want them to come in and run into it, so I want them to stay away from it.
Sounds good. A lot of times I've heard the same thing, nothing's for free. It's the word they used in the terminology in the book, so it's the clear hip. So that's good. That we got that settled out. So now that the ice is broken and as people are coming in, once again, welcome to the episode number 6, developing the foundations and the fundamentals of bars. Okay, so we're going to start right away, and we're going to discuss bar development program. Now, obviously, one of the big issues sometimes people have is that when you develop bars, your children are very, very young. Hand diameter size is very small. Some coaches will actually even start on a metal bar as opposed to a wooden bar. Some coaches will hold off on getting grips a little bit longer or later. Sometimes the old saying is no grips until you get kips. So how do you treat when you first get the young gymnast, the developing gymnast who can barely kind of grip a bar? Do you focus more on conditioning, basics? How would you introduce bars? May I have Cassie Rice discuss that one?
We usually just start them all out and trying to get the compulsory skills because we're not totally just solely focused on getting them the top level gymnastic skills, but feeling successful for that season, which we think is really, really important because all along the process, they have to enjoy what they're doing and feel good about what they're doing. So sometimes we're not always focused on just achieving the very best technique for the top gymnastic skills, but to do well for that season and enjoy their journey through the season.
Thank you so much. Kay, let's hear your input on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Cassie. I think it's super important to just make sure that each step of the way the kids are successful with what they're actually putting out on the competition floor, because I think that's how you build confidence. But as far as like technically, I mean, I kind of stick by the no grips till kips. We have our kids, show us a straight arm kip before we introduce them to grips consistently. And then as far as like tap swings and all that kind of stuff, I mean, just a huge emphasis on straps and just getting them comfortable with tapping and, honestly just playing when they're young and kind of, I think bars is just, it has to feel natural and getting adjusted to swing and all that kind of stuff. And I think straps is a great foundation to build those basics on and kind of just instill a love of bars, because I think if you miss that, early on, then it's really hard to get them to buy into wanting to be great on bars when they're older.
Thank you so much, Kel. Steve, input please on that.
All the stuff these guys said is really, really important, that they're working on the compulsory things and things that are going to make them at least moderately successful, right? So they feel pretty good about it. Some things that are important to me, and you can kind of make it a game for the kids and make it fun, is I try and introduce mixed grip, over grip, under grip, regress, jumping to support and sliding their hands, because when they're in support, they're going to feel really good and stable. And so I do a lot of grip work and a lot of support work because I think they need to understand support. And you can make all that stuff games, even introduction to flyaway, just, swinging out and landing on your back and give them a little spot and things like that. So we kind of mix it in and make those games because they all want to try that stuff. And it's a little laborsome in spotting and stuff, but, we want to do that as well. So very similar.
Thank you. Sometimes I've heard that on bars, we overstress the kip in the compulsory levels and we don't emphasize the tap swing, the proper swing. And that's why sometimes you have, unfortunately, kids peeling off or, rush flyaways. Sometimes the argument is made that, we spend more time on the back handspring than we do the round off. And then you're trying to go back and fix these issues. Colden, what do you see about that, kips versus taps and the emphasis on that? All right.
I think I got it. The way I try and break out our program is almost splitting off. We've got our, like what Cale had said too, kind of building on that. We've got our compulsories working on the supporting positions, the low bar positions, but then kind of building a fully separate event around strap bar and utilizing straps a lot, even really, really young, just starting to learn really basic shapes and kind of taking playing around, getting the fun of just circling on straps and, on a toe position, on a straddled toe position, and then kind of tap swinging is almost its own event that we try and give the kids enough time to play around where they're not, because it just takes one kind of peel off when they're young to, like what Cale had said, lose the love of it. We want the kids to love it. So I think strap is almost its own event when they're younger, developing those kind of tap swings. I think you can do it at the same time, but in different areas for us.
Yeah. Does your gym have two sets of straps, like a high one and a low one, or do you kind of adjust?
Yeah,
Oh,
we've got the way we set it up is we've got one low strap and one high strap for sure, and then we've got a U-bar set up on pins. So if you want to lower it down, those U-bars are great because you can build up P-bar blocks to just work on circling, or you can set it up really high if you're working on something else. So that's we have three. One low, one high, and then one kind of question.
Okay, and if I may see with the show of hands, coaches, how many of you use a glove or mitten system on strap?
Oh, that was my question.
Yeah. Okay. So one,
gloves,
two,
and
what about you, Cass? You use the pipe, I assume. You use PVC pipe. Okay. And what about you, Colden? What do you use? PVC pipe or?
I do both depending on where they are in learning. I think the gloves are super important to start to introduce shifting because the PVC you can cheat around so easy, but it's safer, more fun, easier at the beginning. So I think I develop our youngest ones on just the PVC, and then we go to a mix of gloves on low and PVC on high, and then start to introduce gloves on both. But we use both.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've done too is also PVC, then gloves. But I find that once you get them on the PVC, they're not a big fan of going to that glove system too quick. And,
right.
For in-bar stuff, we've also used the split PVC,
Yep.
with two pieces, opening and closing and stuff. Pat, why don't you take the next question?
Okay, so how do you guys introduce circle elements like the clear hip toe on installer, and do you have a preference at your gym in terms of which one is done first or just which one is preferred as a whole? Just raise your hand, anyone who would like to take this one first. Cal?
Yeah, so I was going to kind of relate this to your question about overdeveloping kips too. And my personal opinion is I don't think you can overdevelop a kip. Even my level 10s, I have them like with a trench setup and kip and stopping with their feet in a straddle on the kip just to get their chest in. And we do drop kips every day and all of that stuff. And then for me, it's super important that they have a foundation of kip casting in a row before I really get into circles. I think that their ability to maintain that pressure from handstand down through horizontal and then out into a kip. And then I teach re-gripping in the front. That way they're pushing the whole time they're coming down from handstand, I think is super, super important. So if my kids can't successfully do that, I'm, like Cassie kind of said, I'm sticking with the compulsories. And if I need to be working a clear hip a lot, I'm working that. But on the side, I'm really focusing on just kip casting in a row to introduce the pressure. From there, You know, I like for my kids to try to have 4 or 5 circles. So I don't limit them on that. I think toe hands are probably the easiest to work out of, and it's easiest to fly, and you kind of create the most power from that shape. And I think long-term in gymnastics, I think girls have an easier time maintaining a toe hand than a stalder. Yeah, I think I kind of introduce toe hand stalders all at once. And then once they can master that, then go to inside. And I teach endos as well, because I think that I teach it more for elite track kids, because I think we need to find creative ways to get our front grip element rather than just relying on a Jaeger, because it's hard to work in and out of. And yeah, that's kind of my system.
Awesome. Thanks, Cal. Anyone else want to speak about this? Cassie?
Yeah, I'll just quickly just speak about rules in general, just because I remember when I first started my gym, 92, and I knew that only the best girls did straight body cast handstands and all the weak ones did straddle up. So nobody in my gym was going to ever do a straddle up. We were only going to do straight bodies. And then I go back and look at the video, and I have all these kids doing these bent knee, arch up, terrible looking straight body handstands. And I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? That was like, it was just a really, so as I go through it, like I would have rules. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. This. And then somebody would come along and it wouldn't fit for them. And so then I would totally change it and be like, okay, for them. So I try really hard now to really listen to the kids and listen to other coaches and listen to other ideas, because so often I find that I keep changing my steadfast rule that I know I'll never break. So that's just one thing. But I think the clear hip definitely is the easiest one to get started with. So all the compulsory kids start with the clear hip. We start them in level 5 on late toe on drills. So jumping from the floor and putting the feet on at the bottom so that they start those drills. So after they're in a higher level and they want to go clear hip and toe on around out of it, they've at least started the drills for the late drop on the toe on, because that kind of takes a while to get.
Thanks, Cassie. Steve, I saw you had your hands up too.
Build on what these guys said. I like everything that I'm hearing. If you're doing a kip the right way, a kip is a downswing. There's a push in the back, an extension, a swing through the bottom, a slight hip opening for a lot of kids in the front or straight, and then a snap back. So in a way, it is a tap, and you are starting to work the shapes that you're going to use for your downswings later on. So it's very important that you start thinking ahead when you do that. You know, hey, this is the beginning of swing. You know, it's a smaller swing or a medium swing, but if you get the shapes and you get the head positions right, they're looking down the arm, you know, at the rail and stuff, that's where it all starts. And so, you know, and if judges are seeing that kip, I know many elite kids, like what Cale touched on it, if they don't extend the glide in the front, right off the bat, they're going to lose 1 or 3 tenths. So it's very, very important. With the circling elements, I like the clear hip. I like the toe hand. I think with the toe hand, you're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because it's very similar to a stalder. And so you may get 2 circles. And if you're thinking of, you know, an athlete that may release later on or something like that, I agree. It's a larger range of motion from the toe hand. You know, you can open your armpit, you can open your hip really hard. So there's a lot of power and rotation there. But you need 3 or 4 circles if you're going to be upper level. But with the little guys, like what Cassie touched on, kind of play with it all and find out what is best for the individual, and go with that and perfect that, because they're going to have more success with that.
Excellent. Anyone else want to make a quick comment, or? All right, we're going to move on. So I'm going to go back to what Cale had said earlier about the kip. And we have to honestly say the kip is probably one of the most fundamental, recognizable skills on bars. I often tell my athletes, what's the one kind of skill you always see, you can see from level 4 all the way to elite? And you're saying kip cast handstand. So when you're breaking down the kip, Cale, I'm going to go to you. How much is actual drills, side stations, body stations, and how much is actual application and spotting? Especially now that times have changed and we're probably not going to be spotting directly as much. How would you break it up in your expertise?
I mean, I mean, with your level 3s and those kinds of kids, I mean, I would be doing a ton of just glides and getting their chest in and hips open and breaking down the glide and then hand spotting them on the actual kipping action. But I think that those kip machines, those are a great tool to just get the kids shifting. I think tons and tons and tons of side stations where they're shifting. And then honestly, I think the biggest thing with all this is just letting them play, and then, you know, letting them try 5 kips, and then off on the side they have their drill work. I would say, you know, maybe 3 drills, and then they're trying 5 kips in a row and just getting excited about making a kip. I know there's, you know, that's probably the skill most kids get super amped about, and the whole gym goes crazy when they get a kip. So I think the sooner they can get to that moment and have that love of what they're doing and excitement surrounding it, and then continuing to do drills to kind of perfect it over time is important. But I think getting that skill is a huge confidence boost to kids. So I would let them try it and try it and try it.
Thanks so much, Kel. Colden, next. As we know, the transition from how a compulsory kid like does a kip and then eventually getting to that kip cast and then the kip handstand, do you find there's difficulty in transitioning from the regular kip to the kip cast? And do you have any tips?
Well, one thing kind of going back, because I was thinking about the development of the kip, and a piece of equipment that I used forever. I don't have it at my gym right now, but that old kind of Total Gym. I know that's like what we used a ton. It's one thing I miss the most right now is finding one of those Total Gyms where you kind of lay on the kind of dolly, I guess, that kind of slides up and down with the cables. We used a ton of that. We actually attached a PVC bar to it so the kids could learn the straight arm pull down. I think for me, it's breaking down half mechanically, like getting the lats really strong, and any exercise we can do to get their lats strong enough to kind of do that straight arm pull down is super important for developing it. I use a lot of either trench or spotting where when they're learning that kip, they're doing a lot of drop kips, and I stop their feet either with blocks where they can stop their feet on their own, or as a spot with their feet in front of them. And I don't have as much as the kids that trail their feet back really fast. They don't have that controlled L that end up struggling with putting the kip into the cast. So I think the more we develop and spend time, like when I see that kid, we always have our station to go back to drop kipping or something on the floor where they have to sit up and keep their legs in front of them. I think that helps with transitioning into having a stronger cast.
All right, excellent. Steve, also going from that kip to the kip cast handstand, and how is your preferences versus the straddle and the straight body? Because I know some coaches who swear they'll never straddle cast their gymnasts.
Well, it's an interesting, point that Cassie brought up, because I came up with that same thing, straight body, but that's what was pounded into us early. But if you look back at the last probably 5 or 6 world champions, they had both. When they were close to the end of the routine and they were a little bit more tired, you notice that they'll start to straddle. So you need both. And it's all about clean, right? Clean does well, less execution. So if they straddle better, go straddle. If it's cleaner, if they straight body, go straight body. The straight body may have overall some, developmental aspects that are better, but you got to do what's clean, because the clean wins, and the kids are going to do well with that. As far as the kip, I like to do a lot of work in the beginning of and right now we can't spot. So if you were to take a barrel and put it in front of the athlete, between the athlete and the bar, have them jump up and push on the bar with their legs on the barrel. So there are 2 points of support. When there's 2 points of support, whatever's between those points tends to be tight. If it's only 1 point, like just their arms, they can, relax and swing under. So working the jump, push in the back. So we're going to just go from simple to complex, or from easy to hard. Working those positions in the back and in the front, and then in the middle, we're just working a long hang hollow from the chest as much as possible. Working static shapes, so holding that pike position with the shoulders up, that they're in support, rocking them a little bit, letting them feel that, and then just beginning to put those things together. So a nice push, a good glide, a kip to a pike hold, and then a cast. and let them feel that. And then you slowly start to speed that up when you like what you're seeing and they're getting that good bar bend and the cast is nice and tight. And just going simple to complex and liking those shapes, starting static and then putting some power behind it. Because if you put power behind it before it's ready to go, you lose it out the backside or you have issues. So and that's how I would break it down.
That's excellent. Cassie, when you're developing your gymnasts for good, strong handstands on bars, what are some of the drills that you prefer or do a lot of?
Well, first of all, in 95% of our kids start with straddle ups. We only have a couple who are really a lot better at a straight body. So we start a lot of them with straddle, almost all of them with straddle ups and try to get that first. But to me, getting the cast handstand vertical and the kip strong enough to get to vertical really strong has to do with strength. So how do you trick kids in to doing as much strength as you can without making it too grueling and miserable, and do circuits or fun different activities so that they are tricked into getting strong enough to kip and sit up and hold their feet in front and get that cast handstand up there. Then of course there's all the shaping and all the different things that you want the rib cage in, you have your back flat. We try to mix it into some kind of a fun assignment every day so that they're getting this drill in, then they do this shaping, they go do their item, then they put their piece in or play their game real quickly and then keep going around. So it's about hustle. The more they hustle and the quicker they work out, to me, the better strength they get without realizing it. And that's the key to me, is getting them strong with tricking their brain that, you're not in the middle of a really grueling workout. Because if you notice, sometimes kids in conditioning, they're trying to figure out the easiest way out of it. And that doesn't really make you strong. So you're trying to figure out how to trick them into not realizing they're working as hard as they are and getting strong. I lost.
John,
Okay.
you're
Muted.
My apologies. Colden, how
Okay.
much handstand and work do you do conditioning during the rotation and, of course, outside your rotation for your cast handstand work? And you do a lot of press work too.
Yeah, we do a lot of press. The other thing that I've used a lot, I think I tend to try and develop the straight body in single casting when they're working. We do a warm up at the beginning where they kind of hit all their physical abilities, and we tend to stay straight body when we're developing just from a cast. And then a lot of my kids will learn kind of a kip to straddle stoop on and then jump to handstand. So they start learning those mechanics with it separated by kind of a straddle stoop for straddle ups to get their butt up. The other thing that I've used a lot when I've, especially in like tops where you don't get the choice, or the elite compulsory where you don't get a choice of straddle or straight, is a lot of P-bar work. I teach all of my little kids to learn how to swing. I think like how many guys events, like I never had a problem straight body casting, but we had rings where you did L presses and you had P-bars where you were constantly learning how to swing with your feet together, and you had high bar. So the girls don't have that advantage to having 3 different apparatus to teach you how to swing with your feet together. So I try and incorporate as much P-bar swinging either on P-bar blocks or on the actual P-bars. And we have an assignment for our tops kids that's just, we put a big cloud mat in front of on the end of the P-bars and lower them really low and just teach them how to get confident with swing up and fall over onto their back into the big cloud mat. And that tends to get their shoulders over and they kind of learn how to get that straight body swing a little bit more. We do that a lot.
Yeah, utilizing men's equipment can actually be very beneficial. I mean, back when I was at Parkettes, Joe Stallone, we'd go over to his section of the boys' gym and work with the rings and the high bar and the parallel bars. Cal, do you see any applications of that or that are beneficial to women's gymnastics?
Yeah, totally. To be honest, I haven't been in a gym where the setup has worked well, where I can access guys' equipment as I'm teaching bars, but I did a segment on straight body cast handstand stuff at home, and I made my own little P-bar setup. I do think I think the two are very correlated, and I think it's really important. One thing I was going to say too with cast handstanding, I think that gets overlooked a little bit, whether you're doing legs together handstand or straddle, is just the importance of kip cast horizontal and just making sure that shape, like, in warm up sequences or circuits or anything like that, my kids all, regardless of what shape they're doing, to handstand, do a lot of that. And I think it tackles that initial shape, because I teach straddle up from a horizontal two and then to a pike, trying to get their hips over their head and then straddling at, on the way up. So I really like the horizontal, and doing in a row, I think, targets circles and all of that as well. So I definitely, lower level kids all the way up to the highest level kids are doing kip cast horizontals every day.
That's excellent. And I do believe that's very important that gymnasts learn about angles and learning about holding support shapes, whether it's horizontal, midway, or handstand. Because lots of times as coaches, we just try to get the end prize, and then we kind of forget to focus on all the different aspects of it. And I always tell athletes too, when you're first learning a skill, you're not going to hit handstand that often. You're going to probably hit shy of some of the skills. So you should know how to compensate, of course, and learn to control those types of skills. And sometimes you end up surprising yourself what they can do. Pat.
Totally. And I think like Cassie says too, like all of that stuff can just be made into games for these younger level kids, and like who can stop their cast for a second and hold it, or just games between groups and how many in a row can you do. And I just think that engagement and keeping it fun at those levels, while, subtly trying to enforce good technique, is more the key when you have that large number of kids that you're going to have at compulsories, and wanting them to just have a great foundation and love of the sport, regardless of what level they end up being.
Thank you so much, Cal.
Okay, so we just got a question. How can I help my gymnast to get better and stronger if I only have 30 minutes per bar rotation? I'm teaching giants, cast handstands, flyaways, etc. So do you guys have any tips on maximizing the efficiency of a bar workout? Cassie?
Sure. So especially if you have a short period of time, and when we go back in the gym, we're probably going to be cutting all our hours down and not having the kids here as much. There's a bunch of different things. First of all, I think the most important is to plan ahead. Plan what your game, contest, or thing that keeps them hustling ahead of time. So that way it's all written out, we're ready, we explain it quickly, and we get moving right away. We always start off with what we call the appetizer, which is the beginning of the rotation. And the appetizer is usually something quick and getting moving right away. So for vault or something else with legs, you're going to get the legs fired up and moving and going real quickly. On bars, it's probably going to be something like, for our 910s, kip cast handstand contest, or holds, something really quick. The other thing I would tell him to do is, on another event, when you're waiting at the end of the vault runway, try to get a floor bar over there, or try to get something done on another event, because sometimes they're a little bit stronger, especially like a level 7. They are tumbling and vaulting is easy for them at that point sometimes. Then you could practice setting up a station that has to do with something they're really weak on, bars. And that can just be the strength or shaping of it, or it can be actual floor bar skills brought over there. Sometimes I have the boys bring over their mushrooms. So, we try to really go, hey, what are they weak on? Let's try to integrate that into something where they're stronger.
Great, Cassie, thank you. Would anyone else like to touch on that?
All right. Oh, Colton.
I think I would just build on that too. I mean, I think it's hard to do a 30-minute bar rotation. I would maybe try and add a little bit more time, because you can, like Cassie said, the other 3 events can feed in a lot easier to each other. But if I had 30 minutes, a lot of my warm up and complexing would definitely add in those straddle ups, add in cast ups, add in pirouettes into my complexes and warm ups, make sure I'm getting as much floor stuff in as I could early. Maybe even like some dropping technique for circles into my warm ups, so that I could maximize that time. And then I think also having assignments for, if you've got 30 minutes and some of your kids take 2 minutes to get their grips on, timing them, getting that faster, or giving them complexes to do either footwork or ankle work that they can do while they're getting their grips on, maximizing that time too helps.
Yeah, sometimes we don't realize, but when you break down a 40-minute rotation and you only have a few set of bars and the kids are going on and off, they spend actually a very short amount of time actually on bars. Maybe I'm a little biased, but think about beams. If you're a gym with plenty of beams, where sometimes each gymnast gets their own beam, and they can still do beam drills that are pretty much applicable on the floor or on a panel mat or some other drills. But on the bars, you're limited. It takes time, especially strap bars, setting in and out. So as Cassie and everyone said, you really need to manage bars precisely. Set up your times, know what you're doing, assign. I actually would make up individual assignments for my gymnasts rather than do a group one, because you know what areas they need. Now I would say, like Ellie Kim, you need to do more clear pans in a row, and other girls will be working on their dismounts. And of course, monitoring and keeping on that. Does anyone else want to say, Steve, let me hit you. How do you manage time?
I try, number one, I try and work in positive numbers. So if I have an athlete and she's strong enough physically or mentally to do 5 or 6 of something well, then we will hit 5 or 6 and we'll immediately move on. I don't want to fight with them, and I don't want to work in negative numbers. Because if I do 2 good ones and I can't do any more, and I do 2 bad ones, I'm at a 0. I'd rather do 2 or 3 a day for 5 days and have a positive 15 at the end. And I think kids move faster when they think that way. This is where I am. And then maybe in a week, I would try and add 1 or add 2. A lot of your bar work actually is going to be done on floor. Your complexes, your pirouettes, your late toe drills, and things like that as well. And then, building on what these other guys are saying, if they know what their personal drill is or their personal weakness, like Cassie said, it's written down ahead of time and they know what to expect. And return stations are 2 of their personal parts. They may be different stations, but they're getting what they need. And so just teaching them to be very efficient, very quick, and to get it done positively. Because if you can get a group of athletes working like that for a couple years, you're going to have a great attitude and a great group later on, and if they know, you're not going to force them to do something, but they're going to get their positive numbers in and they're going to move on. Because in the long run, you're much better off working that way, and you're going to get a much higher quality as well. So those are some things that I would try.
Just to give some of the audience a visualization, what is your bars like? Like how many full sets do you have? How many strap bars, single rail, resi, hit?
Are you still on me?
Yes, Steve.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My bars are lined up straight. I've got 2 full sets of rails with 20 centimeter mats, and then directly in line with that, I've got a resi that's got 2 bars that are interchangeable so they can be low and high strap. And then I've got another set off the side, which I can have a strap on high or low and a regular bar. So, a lot of strap work. And then I have vault runways beside that are 8 feet apart. And so I have foam between that for my return stations on bars. And so essentially they just move down through the bars. Normally for straps, my kids have gloves and they have their own set of straps, so they're pretty quick in and out. And so I'll look at the amount of athletes I have and I'll divide the strap time. And they know when one athlete's in straps for maybe 6 minutes and they come out, they'll go back to the rails and the next athlete will move into straps for 6 minutes and they'll have their assignment or their endurance work. And we just move down a line and then back in our drills in a line, down a line and back in our drills in a line. So always moving. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, true bar stations, and then, probably a couple return stations, and then, a little rest in between. So that's
Steve, I have a quick question about the straps. So you said each one of your kids has their own straps. Do you purchase the straps for them? Do you size them? Do you have them custom made?
We've done both. You can buy, I can't remember what company it is, but you can buy a bag of straps and they're all varied sizes. And so normally what we'll do is we'll get a couple bags and the kids will find something that fits them and they'll kind of keep them. The straps are all out there. And right now it's important because we don't want our kids sharing straps, right? We want them to have their own gloves and their own straps and things like that. I think that's important now. And we've also, we had a mom that had a very powerful sewing machine. And at REI, you can buy tubular webbing. And so we would let them pick out their tubular webbing and the cool colors and whatever. And then we would have this gal, burn them and sew them. So we've done both.
That's very excellent. Sounds like your system is really, really efficient. So that's a great thing. Steve, I know that your gym is now open. So how have you been handling the chalk situation?
We have, each athlete has their own little Tupperware container of chalk. And as well, we've set some buckets around. We have a big chalk tray. And I'll tell you ahead of time, try and have them set when they're chalking their Tupperware container on a mat or inside of a bucket or something, because there's little chunkies of chalk all over the place. But so that they have their own chalk and their own little, little box of chalk that they can take around. And then, some kids like just want to use the chalk tray, but we've got our grid system. So, they have to line up. And again, it's just like efficiently moving down the line. When you come back for your chalk, you wait on your little grid and you'll go through and you'll take your time with Tupperware, or, you'll go in the chalk tray.
Okay, thank you so much. The next person I'd like to talk to is Kale. Kale, we have a question from Aaron on what are your thoughts on thumb positions, casting for kipping and other things, the classic thumb here, there, sideways. And I know you have personal experience as well.
Yeah, where to start? I think that it's super individual to the kid. I think that my ideal is that they can use their thumb on the top of the bar to hold a handstand. I think when you add the thumb, it just adds an extra dimension of their ability to hold and strength. But I'm constantly looking at their ability to maintain a straight elbow kip while putting their thumbs around the bar. And I'm also looking at their ability to get their thumbs back off the bar into the next skill. So I have kids that, I have them use their thumbs into certain skills and not other skills within the same routine. So into their circles, I have them use their thumbs. Into their giants, I don't. It really is just super individual. And I've seen every way work. I will say, I think that kids that use their thumbs when they kip, I think it's important to every once in a while have them do a kip cast without their thumbs, because I think a lot of the time you'll see that they end up arching and collapsing over the bar and they're kind of using their thumbs to, like Cassie said earlier, find the easiest way to get to handstand. So I do both. I do all of it. I do that with giants too. I do it with circles. I'm constantly just trying and keeping an open mind with what each kid needs. I have them shift with their thumbs on circles, without their thumbs. I try to raise kids in the culture of the kids that I coach to be very fluid. And if I'm like, hey, take your thumbs off the bar on this turn, they can just like flip a switch and do that. And I kind of like to challenge them in that way. I think you see a variable of every kid's at the highest level. Jordan Weaver did every single skill in her whole routine with her thumb around the bar, giant, swinging, catching it to Kachev, all of it. Peng Lee did the same thing. And I know other elites and the high kids doing things at the highest level that don't use their thumbs at all. So, yeah.
Cassie, do you mind following up on this question?
Yeah, so we didn't used to teach thumbs at all, and Tasha went to UCLA and they made her switch to it, and I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. I guess where the cast handstand is so super important in college, we better get that thumb around the bar to try to balance that handstand better. So we started teaching when they sit up their kip right there, that's when your thumb comes around the bar to start the cast. And if they, like Kale said, if they are starting to bend their elbows, or some people can't move their thumbs very easily without having a problem in syncing, then we give it up. But we try teaching everybody that as they're around level 4, we try to sit up on the kip with the thumbs and casting it, and they get a little bit more control. Sometimes the front hip circle, we go right to the cast with the thumbs there too. So we have our quote unquote rule of trying to teach it, but then we have a lot of one thumbers and we have a lot of no thumbers. And so we let them be individual.
Thanks so much. Real quick, Cassie, when you open your gym, are you planning to use any liquid chalk at all? Or are you going to stay with the traditional chalk?
We've never used liquid chalk, so I don't think so. The one thing I've heard besides what Steve just said with the Tupperware is they have Ziplocs that are larger than gallon size, I guess 2.5 gallon or something larger, and that every kid gets their own bag with chalk. So we would probably be giving that to them, but that's the only thing that we're thinking.
We should probably make it a quota too, right? Kids should be on a quota. See who the chalk hogs really are.
That would be nice. A contest of who can make it last the longest, right? That would be really good. But I did hear that there's a new thing that it's not as contagious on surfaces and it's more air to air. So, so now it's not going to be maybe as worrisome, but you don't want them crowded around a chalk box like they tend to do and chit chat across from each other so close, so that they'll still need to separate, I believe.
You know, I always tell my kids, talking spreads the virus. So you just have a zero talking policy for a while, at least when you're on your events.
That'd be nice.
Steve, any opinions you have on the thumbs and all that stuff?
Yeah, on the thumbs, I think you just observe your athlete, and some kids naturally tend to use them and some don't. I had an athlete one time that was a national bar champion, and she had her right thumb over and her left thumb under. So, I think I agree with everyone that you have more control on top of the bar if your thumb's over the top of the bar. And if you're very, very tight, you can actually balance using your wrist, which is what a great handstand I think will do. I think that you have a little less friction on downswing, especially front giant, with your thumb over, not over the bar, but in line with your fingers. And most kids, when they shift to support, they do put their thumb over the top so they just move them back and forth. I was raising my hand because we had a parent make a batch of the liquid chalk with the alcohol and the chalk. And number one, it took me 2 days to get anyone even to look at it. They did not want to mess around with it. But what we did find, one of the athletes used it today on her grip for the first time and said, it wasn't too bad. But I'll tell you where it works really, really well is on their feet. If you have kids that have sweaty feet and you put that on their feet and it dries, it doesn't rub off on the beam and it tends to stick to the feet, and the alcohol dries their feet. So, if you don't want chalk all over your beams, it tends to work pretty good for that.
How often are you actually, are you trying to sanitize or clean your bars as well? And how often do you do that?
What we do is our matting and everything, we sanitize all the time. All of our spin locks between each rotation, and the bars themselves, I'll go over those and spray like a Lysol and let it fall down onto the bar. But anything we've tried to wipe the bar down with just, clumps the chalk. And I think over time, if it's an alcohol-based substance, I think it'll ruin the veneer on the outside of the bars. So just a spray that falls down on it and covers the whole bar seems to work pretty good.
Thanks so much. Colden, let's finish it up with everyone. Your opinions on the thumbs and technique. Okay. Can't hear you, Colden, if you can unmute yourself.
All right, got it. I think everybody else has I agree that it has to be kind of paying attention to what the gymnast is most comfortable with. I know we've tried to get thumbs over with certain athletes and it becomes this bent arm. It's really tough for them to shift. So definitely focusing on what's most comfortable for the gymnast. For a general rule of thumb that I look at is anytime you're stopping momentum from one direction and trying to shift back to a different direction, we try and get them to have their thumbs over the bar because they're going to have more stopping power. So kip casting, try and shift your thumbs over before you start into a circle element. Giants, you don't need it as much. I think like a pack, I think you can find athletes from, either direction, but I tend to try and get them to get their thumbs over, at least on top or over the bar for the pack and overshoots. Because you're stopping that momentum. That's typically like the rule of thumb, and then depending on where what they're most comfortable with or what looks the cleanest is where we kind of develop from there.
Okay, and actually to follow up with that, I want to talk about bar distances. Of course, a lot of athletes, we have the traditional fig setting, and then you can go lower and higher than that. But you're dealing with gymnasts who are different heights, some are different strengths, some have different distance to the jump. And last week we had Miss Val from UCLA even discuss how Kyla Ross fought them on trying to change her bar distance. She wanted to stay on fig the whole time, but they finally forced her to go wider, and her bars ended up beautifully. So how do you deal with distances and athletes and your perception on that?
We have a couple of sets of bars that we get to use, but we all talked about kind of trying to stay efficient. I tend to try and just keep 2 settings. So I've got my fig set and I've got a wider setting, just all the way out. The height is the only thing that we'll kind of play with, and we try and keep it at least synced to our groups. So we've got 9s and 10s that we've got a couple of kids in that group that swing wide that are really tall. So we go up kind of 1 over, or I guess 2 up over the line, and that's where we stay for that group. That's the stuff that I'll shift around depending on what kids are in what group. But I try and just keep fig and wide. And I know I have our kids as kind of a fun game every couple of, it depends. Out of season, it's almost once a week where they'll just go in and try, the wide kids have to go in and try their giants on fig, and then vice versa, just to see. I know a lot of times, like, I like to develop the high to low on fig setting first. So having them kind of comfortable with that. But I tend to kind of, like, I have almost everybody start on fig in the compulsories, and then almost everybody goes towards wide for 7. And then we kind of look at 7 and 8, and then we look at bringing them back to narrow depending on who's doing pack or overshoot or where they're comfortable. But they're always kind of trying both giants on both sets.
Yeah, we actually call it fig and big in our gym. So that's the only 2 settings we have. And of course, for the little guys, you adjust things safely. Cal, how about you? What about you on the settings and bars?
Same as everybody. We have 2 settings, fig and big. I like to keep kids on fig as long as I can, simply because I think the emphasis of the downswing from handstand and being in a good shape is important. And I think having the low bar there kind of forces them to. Of course, once you start seeing, flex feet, bad shapes, all that stuff, then I feel like you reach a point where the fear of hitting the low bar kind of takes over for some of your taller kids. And at that point we would go to wide. I agree with Colden though. Like, I think there's some kids that I've had that are swinging wide, and then we get to teaching them high to lows, and I'm like, these bars are too far apart for them. It's not safe. So I end up trying to get them to come back to fig. And then as far as my rail height goes, I keep it even on low bar and high bar. So whatever, my proportions are the same on low bar and high bar. And I would really love if USAG actually mandated fig and big and told us what the setting should be for meets, because I think that would create a lot friendlier environments at competitions amongst coaches and setting bars. And it would be a lot more efficient for our warm-up times too.
If you ever watch a national or high level bar, it feels like a pit crew at a race. You see all the coaches jumping in, setting the bars, and sometimes I agree with you, Gail. It's such a minor adjustment, but they swear that their athletes can only swing on that. If you don't mind me asking a personal question, Gail, do you have a favorite bar, manufacturer, or brand that you like for your athletes or yourself?
I think we're just the most used to AAI. I think we showed up to one meet this year and it was all Spieth equipment, and we have a Spieth floor in our gym, so that wasn't a big deal. But I think their eyes, their eyes were a little wider for the kids on the Spieth bars. But I don't have a preference. I hope that I can raise kids in the culture of our gym that it's just another opportunity or another challenge to kind of tackle and not be too fazed by it. So I don't have a preference.
Thank you so much, Cal. Steve, I'm going to go to you next. There's always been that controversy on when you're introducing the flyway to your athletes. Some coaches have argued that you shouldn't teach the tuck. You should just stay with the stretch layout. Others say, no, you have to do the fundamental development. What is your take on first introducing? Because as we know, if that athlete hits the bar or gets afraid of it, it can be quite annoying or dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. I spend a lot of time on flyaway, and I don't rush that skill for just the reason you mentioned. I think the flyaway is just an extension of a tap, and if we stay very even and extended as we should in a hang position, and we tap, if we tap easy, our legs are moving slowly, and we let go, we don't flip or we stall and we fall down. And once the kids understand that and the position is right, if you start to add tap or move your legs faster when you release the bar, your upper body will catch up if you're tight. So I just teach it as a pure swing. It's an extension of the swing. And all they have to do the flyaway is keep pressure and just open their fingers. That's it. There's no tugging. There's no pulling. You know, they just let it go. And so I prefer to do it as a layout. But when I say take time, you could take years. You could introduce it as a little flat back when they're little. And then as you see them start to understand swing and tapping faster, seeing their legs, I find to be very, very good to keep the head neutral and the shape right. And understand, if this is my bar and I'm coming off and I'm seeing my legs, as soon as I release the bar and my body rotates, my line of sight will go to the bar and I can see the bar. And then as I continue to rotate, now I can see the ground and I can prepare for the landing. So a lot of preparation. The head position, in my opinion, is very, very important, and visual cues. And I just watch the kids, and you can tell when they're comfortable. You know, if I let them tuck early, you know, I'll find what I do with one end of my body, the other end tends to do. So if I start to bend my leg early, I tend to bend my elbow as well, and vice versa. And normally the kids that break the armpits and throw the head, it's because they don't generate enough leg speed to get on the flip and the set and the pull from the bar. I'll give you one thing I've started doing with some of my younger kids that I'm really having good success with, and you guys mentioned men's equipment earlier, is I've got some rings with a strap maybe a foot long, and I put that strap on the bar and the kids hang from the rings, which makes them do a bigger tap swing, you know, like a trapeze type tap swing, where it's big and they're back and they feel the bottom and they kick and they see their legs and they're away from the bar. So the bar's not so scary. And so they're not in such a survival mode, like, I don't want to hit the bar, you know? And I just have them learn it on the rings. And then I make the strap shorter and and then I have them go with their hands. And it's the first time I've experimented with this, and it's really been successful. And the kids are learning a big tap at the same time. So that might be one thing to try, but you know, you can see it and the kids can feel it. Don't rush that skill. That's a really important skill. And if they understand hang and tap, you know, it's just the leg speed that matters. If they stay stiff, the harder they kick, the more they load the bar, the more the bar's going to throw them where they want to go. Super important skill though.
That is excellent. I have to agree with that too. I feel once again, we rush the flyaway. You know, it's taught at compulsory. A lot of other leagues like Excel and Yoga can introduce it quite early. And, you know, even though the repercussions might not be as bad when you're doing it incorrectly from one salto, but now imagine if you're trying to do a double back or you're adding something to that and you have incorrect technique or you have bad habits. And, you know, just from my humble experience, the worst accidents that I've seen or when that athlete, you know, hits that bar on their rotation going backwards. And it's something I personally don't want to ever see again. I've seen it in competition and in my gym. It's the worst thing. You definitely don't want to see that. So coaches, please go back. Tell everyone, take your time on the flyaway. You know, it's their dismount. It's their ending. You want to take time. Cassie, do you mind following up a little bit on that in your experience?
Yeah, so we start off usually with the tuck flyaway, but with the layout set, so the candlestick set. And the way to get to that, we do make sure that they're pushing with their wrists on the bar so that they have tension in the back, which helps them fly in the front. So if they push back and do a quick movement of your feet, like Steve said, they'll set up into that layout position. They tuck on over to start, and we do a lot on the wall with sets and spotting. They start with tuck, and then as soon as we see their swing large enough, we go to the layout. The boys coaches in our gym want to go to the layout right away, and then all the boys who are swinging little start laying their shoulders back and flipping it and pulling with their arms to get around because they have to stay laid out and their swing isn't big enough. So we like to start with that tuck, and then as soon as you see that swing bigger, we know they're going to make the layout. But the push on the bar to me is the most important. And I just want to say one more quick thing about the setting. For the little ones jumping to the high bar, we sometimes have this thing where people are like, you have to be at this setting. It's just scary when they're really little. So just push it all the way in, and then you can inch it out and just make them feel comfortable and safe first. And then don't worry about jumping to the high bar is only hard when you're little, and it's super easy as soon as you're taller. So just push them all the way in and then inch it out. For the bar settings, we do fig and big as well, but only when we're at the top levels. When they're little, we mush them all the way in.
I agree. A lot of people don't realize it, but a little kid doing an incorrect squat on and falling, or
Number one
grabbing a
way of
bar
breaking
and
the
peeling
arm.
off, yes, they're once again through experience, it's very scary.
Number
So
one way of
please,
breaking
yeah,
the arm.
take
Yep.
exactly. Please take your time with the little ones on teaching them how to do a proper squat on and teaching them how to jump off if they miss.
Mhm,
So, Pat,
for
do you have
sure.
anything next? Oh no, I'm sorry, Kale.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to the flyway conversation. I think two things I look for. I have all my kids where they all have an extra set of wristbands or something that they can put between their shoulders and their ears. So they're constantly just trying to hang in this position, and their goal is to keep it in their ears the whole time. I teach arms up flyaways only. I think enforcing that open shoulder rotation throughout the whole flip has been super beneficial for us. And then the other thing I think in analyzing if you want a kid to do a layout flyaway or tuck flyaway is to look at their hip shape. And I think the moment that I see a lot of people they're super rigid on, I only want to teach a layout, but then they end up with a lot of pikes. And I think that's another way that you end up just whacking the bar, because they've tapped underneath the bar and then they're folding their body in half instead of getting their hips up and away in that candle shape to keep moving away from the bar. So I think as soon as I see a kid pike, I'll go back and teach them a tuck, and just to really work, open hip shape rather than piking their toes underneath the bar and it ending up like a skin the cat.
Golden, did you want to say anything also on the flyaway? Okay, got yourself.
Yeah, I think I tend to try and do a lot of visual cues, like what Steve was talking about too. My favorite coaching question on any apparatus, but I will say it almost every turn on bars, is what did you see? And so like we start on even on straps as they're doing giants, like I want them to actually see the entire circle, see their toes on the ceiling, and start to not just see blurry lines. And so even when we do the just kind of tap swing to candlestick, having them, they get down, they climb back out of the pit or wherever, and then what did you see? So they're answering back, and if it's they didn't know yet or they didn't get that visual cue, those are the kids that we slow way down until they can say, yeah, I really saw that. I saw the bar behind me. I felt my arms by my ears. If they don't have those visual cues, those are the kids that pull in, and they're the ones that are going to pull in when you go to double back too, because they don't know where they are in space.
Excellent points, Colden. We're going to stay on Colden. So we are running out of time. I knew this would go very fast, and once again, I could personally just quiz you guys and ask questions all night, because I won't lie, bars is one of my passions. So Colden, if we can give some final words, summations on what you think is important for proper development of uneven bars, and maybe throw in a couple of your favorite drills, and then we'll go to each coach and close up.
Sure. I think learning pressure on the bar, I know Kale said it earlier, learning how to push on the bar. We hang so much that it's more inherent for the girls to hang on fingertips than to really feel an overgripped push. So learning how to create pressure on the bar, I think that starts anything you do on floor bar and low bar work. I think that's invaluable, and it saves your endurance. If you're hanging on by fingernails through a bar routine, your forearms are toast by the end of a bar routine. So learning that pressure early is really, really important. One of my favorite drills outside of just every broken down floor bar drill is using the tramp bar. We have just a little 10-foot tumble track that we use that just stays in our bar zone. But everything, I struggle with having kids kind of learn and drill the back end of a circle. All the drops, we do all the late drops, we do all the how to fall into a circle, but developing the back end of that circle is really hard, and I love the trampoline for that.
Wonderful. Kale, we'll go to you next, please.
Yeah, just for a quick summary, is that what we're looking for?
A quick summary, and then
Yeah.
just throw in your favorite drills or equipment, the things that you think everyone should have or you enjoy.
Sure. I think quick summary takeaway for level 4 through 7 bars is, I think the biggest challenge that we face is getting the basics to be fun. And I think that if you can make that your goal and just getting the buy-in from the kids for the basics to be fun, I mean, the skills that they're going to learn in those first 4 or 5 years they're pretty monotonous. It's a kip, it's a clear hip, it's a tap swing, and, you know, starting to work giants. So I think just getting the buy-in and finding your way to make it fun is the biggest thing. And then if you can really use the fun to spend a lot of time on those basics, you know, then that's going to take care of the higher level skills. I think that, you know, we face challenges as coaches in getting higher level skills at 8, 9, and 10 if we haven't taken the time on the basics. So less pressure on having this big grand long-term goal and trying to get there quick, and more pressure on yourself, if you will, as a coach, to make the basics fun and get the kids to buy into that at those early levels is huge and key. As far as favorite drills go, live in straps. I think everybody's heard that a million times. Live in straps. Come up with straps routines. Come up, you know, play add-on with straps. With, you know, they do that on tramp. Why can't you do that in a strap bar? I'm gonna do a clear hip and then toe hand. Add a giant. Add a front giant. Do this. Do that. Make it fun. And then one thing that I don't think any of us brought up, kind of going off what Colton said, I have the tramp bar, and I also use the Tom Forrester roller bar a lot, just on the floor, and helping with back extension rolls. It helps with shifting. It helps with a lot of just those drills. It's, if you don't know what that is, you can buy it on Amazon, but it's like a hexagon. I think geometry wasn't my best subject. Hexagons with a bar in the middle, and then, you know, it creates a little elevation off the floor for them to have to push back harder with their shoulders and maintain a good shape. But yeah, that's kind of my attitude and approach towards compulsory bars.
Thank you so much, Kel. That was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Cassie, do you mind chiming in your final words of wisdom?
Definitely, I want to emphasize the pressure on the bar. That's very, very important on all these skills. But one of the things that I think helps us get a really good bar workout in is everything timed. A 3-minute rotation, a 4-minute rotation, a 5-minute, and it's fast and hustling, and you're yelling out the time. Hey, you guys, there's only 1 minute left, because what they do is they tend to move slowly, but if they know that they only have a minute left, then they'll move a little bit faster. And then the other one is more psychological. Sometimes when I'm not seeing hardly anything good going on, I really don't say anything. And when I see something really, really good, I start going crazy over, woo, positive, 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 because they all, even the kids who have the worst attitude and you think don't care at all what you think, they do. So they want your praise. And when you finally see something good from them, go ahead and point it out. I think that is one of the best ways to get the most out of them and to build their self-esteem along the way.
You know, those are wonderful words. Steve, do you mind finishing us up?
Great stuff. I think that if you can, you know, make it fun, I agree with all of this. It's very monotonous, especially the compulsory stuff. But, you know, if you can make it achievement based, you know, where they're going for straight arms and things like that. And like Cassie said, when they do it, it is a big deal. But don't be afraid to work in percentages with your athlete. You know, if they do something and their arm was 90 degrees and now it's 45, hey, that is so much better. You know, it's 50% better and 60% better and 70%. And they, you know, so they learn to go for that 100%, because let's face it, gymnastics and physical progression is going to happen an inch at a time. It's so rare that you get that athlete that just, bam, they can do it. You know, I mean, that diamond in the rough. So I think that stuff is really, really important. I think teaching your athlete to understand why they're doing what they're doing, making your athlete smart so they get it. So they need to understand the concept of long downswing, short upswing. Gravity's working for you on the way down. You're fighting it on the way up. These guys, support. You've got to know support, you know, so you don't get those clear hips that spin around the bar. And that's also, support is where you get the pressure that we keep talking so much about, which is so important, and holding those shapes. So I think working in percentages and teaching them, because I've always found if you teach that athlete why they're doing it, they're much more willing to do it. And I also find that if they understand why they're doing it and they're comfortable, they're not in survival mode, they'll figure it out. right? And that's what we really want to create. We want to create a strong individual that has coping skills and they can figure it out and they want to keep working on things. So I think that, the basics and that they actually understand those basics. Why do we do a mill circle? To teach a reverse grip and a wrist shift and support. Why do we hold ourselves up? There's reasons for all those things. The single leg cut, so they learn weight transfer to one hand. The compulsory touches and all that stuff. It doesn't build it like maybe some of the tops routines do, where they're working on that blind change, that swing half turn for 3 years, to get it to go up. But if we understand and they understand why they're doing it, they're much more willing participants if they understand it. So make them smart and educate them as to why they're doing it. And then they have a lot of control in what's going on, which I think is super important.
Thank you so much, Steve. So once again, this was a wonderful panel. Thank you so much for being on Coaches on Couches, episode 6. Blast off on bars, developing and building the foundations of uneven bars. I personally wish to thank all our guest panelists, Cassie Rice from Nevada, Steve Arkell from Texas, Cale Robinson from Washington, and Colton Reicher from California. Once again, well represented, all 4 different states. Fantastic coaches in their own respect, fabulous bar workers. My name is John Min. I'm the USECA Video Chairman, and this is with me is Pat Goldsmith. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy the weather. Get some barbecues, and I hope to see more people with open gyms when we're back next week. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Night, everybody. Hey, I hope you guys are back in your gyms soon and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks so much, guys. Had a great time.
That was good, guys.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Oh, there's Gabby again.
Thanks, Gabby.
Are you going to be open during the holiday weekend, Steve, to get some extra time, or Monday, Sunday off, or?
Nope. My kids are so sore after being out for 8 or 9 weeks that but we worked really hard today and they're going to relax and I hope have a really great time before we come in again. And
I didn't ask you, how many hours are you doing?
We cut our hours by, I think each group, we cut our hours by 2 to 3 hours.
Okay.
And just really basic oriented stuff, less conditioning and more gymnastics to get the feel back, because, the gymnastics is still there, right? It's just they got to get that feel back. So we're just really focusing on basics. We'll add a little bit more conditioning next week. Most of the kids did condition where they off, so it's just working on getting the feel back. We have kids that grew 2 or 3 inches.
I've seen some, yeah, mine too.
Yeah, and it's a different kid now.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Did you do all 4 events?
We did. Yeah, we did. And, kind of the same thing. We'll, if we're going a little harder on floor, which we're not doing any hard landings right now, but we'll go drilling on vault. And the next day, if we're going to vault a little bit more, we'll go a little easier on floor. And, really, we're just looking at them individually and just kind of seeing where they're at and trying to make adjustments. And now we know where they're at after a week. So next week, we'll get back into more of a written assignment. But we really just kind of let everyone do their thing this week and get a feel.
Are the coaches wearing masks or no masks?
We don't have any coaches wearing masks. They do have the option to wear masks, as do the athletes. And thus far, they've chosen not to.
All right. That sounds excellent. Do you use a spotting rig at all by chance? I know John does.
No, I like spotting rigs. I don't have one right now. I just try and, basically we're going back to the older stuff where we're just breaking things down more. And, maybe if before we were using 3 parts for a skill, maybe now we're using 5 because we're not spotting. And I'm hoping in 3 weeks or something, we'll reevaluate everything and hopefully be able to start spotting a bit. Most of the things that we spot, we can do against a wall or a block, or, we can figure out a way to do it. But it's so important with those little kids to be able to shape them and make them feel it. I hope we can get back to that soon.
Yeah, I agree. I actually feel the wall is the unsung spotter for bars.
And you know what? I was going to say, Cale said live in straps, so important. And when they're little, live against that wall.
Yeah.
Until that handstand is concrete everywhere you put it. Sure.
I agree. All
Well,
right.
thanks, guys. I really enjoyed that. I like the flyaway because, you heard a couple different ideas. One, to create more rotation than you need, keeping the arms up. Great idea. Cassie, letting them tuck, but focusing on the wrist to the hip, much like an uphill vault to your knees, to get that position. All those things work really, really well, and if you have them all in your arsenal, what a great deal, because
Definitely.
you're going to do it. But that was
Especially to deal with different types of gymnasts, different body types, different, abilities. You really do.
Absolutely. And I'll keep trying to put stuff up on Facebook about what we did right in the opening, what we may have done wrong in the opening. And
That's great.
I hope you guys can open up soon. It really we're so tired this week because we staggered everybody and we're in so many hours, but it just felt great to be back in there. Like there's just a positive, excitement. And, I know we all miss that, and I hope you guys get back soon.
No, I can actually feel it viscerally. So I'm actually excited for myself
I know,
or you.
I'm hyped.
It's tiring, but good.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. Good night.
Hey, guys, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks,
I'll speak to you
everyone.
more
Have
soon.
a good one. All right, take care.
Bye, Pat.
Pat,
Thanks.
thank you. Say hi to Dad.
I will. Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.